A new poll gives Kamala Harris a 29-point lead on Donald Trump among early voters. Chris Graham here, Augusta Free Press. So the poll was from Suffolk University, USA Today, and it's out today, Monday. And it shows overall that Kamala Harris has just a 1 point lead over Donald Trump, 45-44 in their national rendering, with the third party candidates splitting up 1 point each or less than a point each, and then a few people still undecided. Now, the tidbit that I found interesting was an internal that USA Today folks, the Suffolk University folks, asked voters if they've already voted, and if they said yes, then they were asked what they voted for. 63-34 lead there for Kamala Harris among the early voters. And where those two numbers don't seem to jibe is that, for example, here in Virginia, we've had early voting going. We have 45 days of early voting in Virginia. I think it's the longest, or one of the handful of longest tenures of early voting in the country, dating back to a 2019 law passed here by the Democratic General Assembly. So we're already past 1 million voters. Now, there were 2.9 million votes cast in the 2020 election, which, if you remember, was a record-breaking, record-shattering year overall. So we're more than a third of the way there already. That's just interesting. The Virginia Public Access Project has an early voting dashboard. Total number of votes at 1.023 million through the beginning of Monday. I'm talking late Monday night. Now, Joe Biden won Virginia by 10.1 points over Donald Trump in 2020. Kamala Harris, according to the 538 poll average, has a 7 point lead here in Virginia over Donald Trump. Nationwide, now we've already cast over 1 million votes in Virginia. Nationwide, 12.9 million people have already voted overall in the country. That would come to 8.1%. So the rest of the country, especially where early voting starts later than it does in Virginia, which it starts in the middle part of September in Virginia. The rest of the country is catching up to us. But still, 12.9 million people have already voted. And the numbers there that are interesting, 7 million of those are women, 5.9 million men. That just shows the enthusiasm of women to get out and vote. And among women, at least from this survey, Suffolk University USA Today poll, Kamala Harris has a 22-point lead on Donald Trump among women. So women are going out to vote earlier. They're more enthused, and they're breaking big for Kamala Harris. Now, the obvious advantages to having votes locked in already, 2 weeks from tomorrow, and depending on when you're watching, it's 2 weeks from today, right? Is election day, and that's when the votes count, starting election night when polls close across the country. The obvious advantages to having votes already locked in, you're taking advantage of your voters' enthusiasm. So they're voting now. You don't have to keep their enthusiasm up until election day when you get them to already vote. You can focus your get out the vote operations then on a smaller number of people. And I've worked in the party machinery for a while there. I was the Democratic Party chair in Waynesboro, Virginia, where we're based for 3 years, including the 2008 election year, Barack Obama's election year. It's so hard when back then you had early voting in the form of absentee voting, but nothing organized like today. And you worked hard to get your voters energized and ready to go to the polls, and then you just had to keep reminding them that election day was that Tuesday. And then on that Tuesday, you worked really hard because everybody practically voted that day, right? Well, now, we're already at 8% of the voter base turning out. It'll be interesting to see where it gets to by that last Saturday before the election when early voting closes across the country. Yeah, you can focus on less people. In Virginia, we already know that a third of the people have voted, so that should be a big help for both sides, but particularly Democrats who are getting their votes out sooner to just make it easier to get them out, to get the other voters out. And then, the other side, in this case, Republicans, who aren't getting their voters out in greater numbers, has to deal with two issues: motivating their voters, continuing to motivate their voters, and having to really work the get out the vote game really hard on election day. You're getting everybody out in one day, and it's just, so much can happen. I mean, there could be an October surprise. That's when an October surprise could actually have an impact. If that surprise is something that is negative towards your side, that can be really, really harmful if you haven't already locked in votes. And then also something as simple as the weather. I mean, it's early November in the climate change era, not likely to impact the East Coast with snow or anything like that. I mean, we had Superstorm Sandy back the week of before the presidential election in 2012, if I recall that right. But you're not going to have I mean, you could have a hurricane. It's still the very end of hurricane season goes through the end of November. So you could theoretically have a hurricane, even though this time of year it's not quite as frequent as it was just a few weeks ago, right? The occurrence is not an issue. But you're leaving that to chance. Bad weather on election day could people could say you can't get out to vote. It might be very localized, but still it could be an issue. Uh, so those are the numbers. Hey, if you have any questions for me, any comments, any news tips, look like any of those, any friendly jabs, not so friendly jabs, feel free to email me at chris@augustafreepress.com.